o'clock. I'd like to call the Rock County Board of Supervisors meeting to order on this 22nd day of February 2024 and ask Supervisor Sweeney to lead us in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
There we go. God be present as we gather today with your light and your spirit. Guide our hearts and thoughts and our actions. Help us with the difficult choices that we have today that affect our citizens and our staff. Bless those affected by personal struggle, addiction, and violence. Get our lives back together. In God's name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lisa, please call the roll.
Here. Momkamp. Bryan. Clayson.
Here.
Prairie. Cullen. Davis.
Here.
Holman.
Here.
Knutson.
Here.
Levy.
Here.
Mawhinney.
Here.
Pierre.
Present.
Pennycook.
Here.
Brashkin.
Here.
Schneider. Scholes.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Sutherland.
Here.
Sweeney. Tillman.
Here.
Towns.
Here.
Whitledge.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Winter.
Here.
Woodman.
Here.
Zajac.
Here.
Zorro.
Here.
Bostwick.
Here.
25 present, 4 absent.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item, item 4, consent agenda. 4A, adoption of agenda. 4B, approval of minutes from February 8th, 2024. 4C, nominations, appointments, and confirmations. C1, appointment to the Traffic Safety Commission. C2, appointments to the 911 Communications Commission. C3, appointment to the Ad hoc Committee on the Future of Rock Haven. C4, appointment to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. D, recognition of county employees or others. D1, recognizing Cheryl Grady for service to Rock Haven. D2, recognizing Anisha Welsh. E, other. E1, authorizing acceptance of the Anti-Heroin Task Force grant and amending the 2024 Sheriff's Office budget. E2, authorizing acceptance of the 2024 Anti-Methamphetamine Traffic Task Force grant and amending the 2024 Sheriff's Office budget. That is the end of the consent agenda.
Are there any questions about items on the consent agenda? Supervisor Cullen?
Not quick enough to get to the consent agenda. Was I called for roll call?
Yes,
Okay.
I caught you.
I didn't respond, so I was wondering. Thank you.
Any other questions on items on the consent agenda? Any objection to items on the consent agenda? Supervisor Zorro?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I object to 4A.
Any others? With the exception of 4A, consent agenda is approved. Next item, please.
Next item is 4A, adoption of agenda.
Moved by Supervisor Clayson, seconded by Supervisor Woodman. Supervisor Zorro?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I must bring to attention a significant issue with agenda item 11G. According to the Open Meetings Law Compliance Guide from the Wisconsin Department of Justice, our notice is required to detail the specific nature of the discussion topics. The current description of item 11G, which only lists the statutory exemption, falls short of these requirements. The guide is clear. Simply citing the authorization for a closed session doesn't meet the standard of specificity needed. Our notice should be as precise as possible without compromising the private nature of the session's content. Continuing with this item on our agenda without the appropriate level of detail not only risks legal compliance issues, but erodes the public's trust in our governance. Considering our legal obligations and our duty to maintain public trust, I move to remove item 11G from tonight's agenda.
Is there a second? There is a second. Discussion.
The notice that's described has been the notice that we've used for, since I've been here in 2017 and since long before then. So it's never been challenged. That's about all I can say about it.
Other questions? Supervisor Zorl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's time to stop using the excuse that we've always done this way and start doing it correctly. I encourage members of the public and everybody watching at home to look at the Open Meetings Law Compliance Guide from the Wisconsin Department of Justice. Thank you.
Other comments, questions? This is roll call. Oh. Supervisor Zajac, excuse me, I didn't see you.
I guess I was going to ask who actually calls this part of the agenda item to and put it on there, and then is there do we need to be expedient about meeting with it?
So in terms of the expediency question, if we don't address one of the items tonight, there will be a negative outcome for the county. Definitively a negative outcome for the county, probably. One of the items that's being considered could be delayed to another meeting, no problem. And who drafts, we basically have some templates, and they're like snippets. Those get put in usually by Haley, and then sometimes I'm asked to review it to make sure it's okay. Usually it is okay. It's the language that we use has been the language that we've used for so long that if it meets that template, then I'll okay that.
Supervisor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question as to whether or not that item can be altered. It's already on the agenda. Can an extension be put on that item?
If by extension you mean the notice, so what the Supervisor Dole is talking about is the requirement under the Open Meetings Law that if you are going to go into closed session, you cite with specificity the exemption under which you are going to go under closed session. That's required to provide the public notice, sufficient notice to understand the nature of the closed session. And so by altering it now, we wouldn't meet the notice requirements, and so it'd be pointless, I suppose.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's appropriate to ask this, but why are we taking an issue with this particular one, seeing as how this is the way we've done this with all of the other ones? And two, is this something that can be handled in closed session, tabled, and then brought back later? Corp Counsel.
Well, so to the extent, that there really is an issue with the notice, which Supervisor Zorl is alleging, then that's not cured by going into closed session. We would need to not go into closed session to cure that. But I don't believe there is an issue with the notice.
Okay, so then the other question is, we've done this as long as I've been on county board, so is there a particular issue with this one, which we probably can't discuss?
I
without
can't.
going
I'm
into
not
closed
going to get into the details until we were to go into closed session.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Cullen?
For clarification, we might have been doing this wrong for several years, but you've never been reprimanded for we have never been reprimanded or ourselves for doing this way in the past.
So, and I actually think that's an overstatement. So the Attorney General puts out a compliance guide. The compliance guide does two things. It cites statute and precedent as this is what the courts have said, or this is clear language from the law that doesn't need to be interpreted. And it says X. This is black letter law. The other thing that it does is it makes some projections about, and this is a bit more loose language than it would use, but the way that I would describe it is we think that the open meetings law or the public records law, because they issue one for each, requires X, or we think that this practice would make it so a community would for sure not violate the law. But in many of these areas, there's been no case law development. And really, this is one of them, where there's very little black letter law that tells you exactly what it means to announce a closed session with sufficient specificity. So communities are left to do this in many different ways. And I can't tell you definitively that the way that we described our closed sessions is for sure going to stand up in court if we were sued about it. But I can say that we've never been sued about it, and it's never been an issue, and we've always gone on this way for as long as anyone can remember.
Go ahead, Supervisor Cullen, did you have another?
Thank you.
Supervisor Peer,
I'd like to call a question.
is that a second? Okay. We have a motion and a second to end debate. Voting yes would mean that we end debate. If you want to keep talking about it, you will vote no. This is roll call. Please vote.
Yes, 23, no 2, 4 absent.
Thank you. Next item, please.
On the motion.
Okay, the original motion, if you'd read it back, Lisa.
Motion is to remove item 11G from the agenda.
This is roll call. Please vote.
Two yes, 23 no, 4 absent.
Next item, please.
We need to approve the agenda first.
Oh, yeah, we're still on that. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Next item, please.
Next item is public hearing. We do not have a public hearing this evening. Item 6, citizen participation, communications, and announcements. We have several people signed up to speak tonight. When you come up, please come up through the center aisle, because we have the screen over there that's kind of blocking your way through. Our first speaker is Ty Bolerud. Please come up to the front. State your name and municipality. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak. The person after Ty is Lisa Messmer.
Ted Ballrood, 4608 Pendleton Court, Milton, North Janesville, Wisconsin. We don't have representation. I was out to jail a couple weeks ago. There's a lot of fentanyl. You just go through jail, and they're giving a lot of people fentanyl out there. Here's a letter, November 5th, Police Department. Try to find some fear for safety to help develop the 51.15 criteria. And if there's something criminal, we need to try to take her into custody. This itself may result in a 5115 behavior, legal counsel county. There was a recent fire at Diane's residence, and she's now using a generator and having other homeless people stay there. Ty Ballard is one of her friends. Dated November 5th, 2021. I'm talking about the 20 public nuisance to 50, depending on at any given time. There's 20 to 50 public nuisance hidden division individuals at the city of Janesville. Currently, the county sheriff's office is covering up. Currently, the county jail is covering it up. Currently, your legal counsel is covering it up. What really sucks is because it affects all sorts of municipal courts. it affects all sorts of township chairmen and county supervisors that could otherwise be able to write a grant. But because there is no administrative public records rule, whether it's at the county here or at the city, Administrative Rule 227 is impossible. I could tell you there's the Department of Transportation sent out for a federal grant and got $6.7 million grant, the biggest grant ever in the history here. But we can't give it to you because we can't give it to anybody here. So legal counsel won't even look at that, and then they can't even put it on a committee. And I could bring
Thank
it
you,
next
Ty.
time. As a matter of fact, I'll bring a couple copies. Maybe you can just pass it along quietly in between the budget revote.
Lisa Messmer, you're next. On deck is Bill Mitchell.
Good evening, board members and everybody else. I'm here tonight to bring attention to the significant tree damage on both sides of Highway 51 from north of the jail to Edgerton when the county conducted tree trimming. If you've not seen the tree damage, I would encourage you to do so because this eyesore might be coming to a neighborhood close to you. It looks like a tornado went down 51. It twisted the limbs off of many trees, leaving sharp splinters. A forester told me a tree with a wound is much more likely to get diseased by pests and other things, and eventually killing the tree and potentially falling into the roadway. My question is, why did this much damage occur? What was it supposed to look like? And how is this going to be remedied? Because the way it looks is completely unacceptable. And what can be done? In conclusion, please consider putting this issue on the agenda in the near future. Thank you for listening, and thank you more for your action. Did I need to give my township, Fulton Township?
Thank you. Next speaker, Bill Mitchell. On deck is Geraldine Ketterman.
Good evening, everyone. I'm addressing you this evening as your boss, and I think all public servants need to be reminded of that. If you're in doubt, refer to the U.S. and Wisconsin constitutions. Social media, newspapers, and resolution reports about problems at Rockhaven are extremely, extremely disturbing. In one of those resolutions, the administrator suggested that we go to the Medicare, Mediclaim website. And therein is a 30-page report. If you read that, and you can read that without tears in your eyes, then you're not human. You better pinch yourself, because the abuse happening to the adults at that facility have to be corrected. It must be investigated. This is basically my point of view, that we need to get on Rockhaven, straighten this out, where the adult abuse taking place. Not my words. Read what the inspectors had said about it. Thank you.
Geraldine?
Good evening, Geraldine Ketterman, Fulton Township. I'm concurring with Lisa, who was just up here about the trees. I had my sister-in-law here from Washington, D.C., and she asked me if the tornado went down 51. She couldn't believe how bad those trees looked. And from my point of view, looking at those trees, you're going to end up paying more in the long run. Those trees are going to come down. They're going to die, all of them, the way they've been mangled to death. And then you're going to be having to have somebody come in with chainsaws and cut all those trees down. So there's something going on there, and like she said, it may be coming to a street near you. It looks terrible in First City of Janesville. I also concur with Bill about Rock Haven. My mother was there several years ago, and there were concerns, some concerns that we pointed out. But after reading that Medicare, all the papers there, there's something going on there that should be investigated. Thank you.
That was our last speaker signed up to speak this evening. Is anyone else wishing to speak?
Are there any supervisors with communications tonight? Supervisor,
For YWCA Rock County Woman of Distinction, so congratulations. Congratulations, Tricia.
any other supervisors? Supervisor Rashkin?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to remind everyone, in case you didn't know, Billet Memorial Theater is having a fundraiser called Perhaps Appropriately Friendly Feud. And it is 4 teams battling it out. It's going to be Friday, which is tomorrow, and 7 p.m. And yes, I'm on one of the teams, so come on down and check it out. Should be crazy fun.
Any others? Anything from staff? Next item, please.
Next item, item 7, nominations, appointments, and confirmation. 7A, confirmation of appointment of airport director.
Moved by Supervisor Winter, seconded by Supervisor Whitledge. Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm excited tonight to ask for your support in approving the confirmation of Amy Screama as the county's next airport director. Amy has spent the last 9 years working at the Waukesha County Airport, currently in the role of operations supervisor, where she oversees the operations and maintenance of the airport. Previously has had experience in that organization as well on the administrative side. So I'm happy to have Amy join us. We think she brings a lot of positive energy, good experience, both at the airport with some marketing type skills that could serve us well, as well as being a pilot herself. I think brings good perspective. So ask for your support.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
And Amy is with us tonight. So Amy, if you'd like to come up and just introduce yourself, we would appreciate it.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. I'm Amy Screama, a Wisconsin girl at heart. I literally married the boy next door, Ryan Screama. It works well for the holidays. One item I omitted from my resume: in the past 9 years, Ryan and I have been co-captains of a platoon of 5 girls, all with a resemblance of me. My greatest accomplishment so far. I was introduced to and fell in love with aviation at Waukesha County Airport, Kreitz Field. Similar to Janesville, we are home to aeronautical service providers, companies fueling, servicing, handling aircraft, corporate flight departments, flight schools, and most importantly, providing a gathering place for the community. I love Bessie's. Over the past decade, I moved from administrative specialist running the books to operations supervisor running the field. In that time, I also earned my pilot's license. Through this experience, I've learned about not only growing a team, but the can-do customer service attitude, all while balancing the regulatory nature of airport management. I'm very fond of the teams I've worked with, and I look forward to joining the team here. I believe that it's not about sustaining or maintaining just the infrastructure that makes an airport strong and viable, but supporting those in aviation and fostering the community that supports that asset to our great county. Waukesha Airport has an energetic aviation community, which, as it turns out, is quite the same love here. I'm excited for the opportunity to continue Greg's initiatives and, with county board support, keep this airport special. In my final interview, the word breathtaking was used to describe the community I'd be joining. That is the kind of community I'm excited to be a part of. I consider it a privilege to have the opportunity to serve Southern Wisconsin Regional Airport and Rock County. That said, I'd love for the chance to get to know you all. Feel free to stop in, reach out. Coffee is always hot. So, thank you.
Welcome. Next item, please.
Next item, item 8, recognition of county employees or others. 8A, recognizing Jody Bauman.
Moved by Supervisor Knutson, seconded by Supervisor Davis. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
It's really an honor tonight to introduce this resolution to Jody, one of the kindest, most polite, professional people I have ever run across in Rock County. Jody served the citizens of Rock County for over 33 years as a dedicated and valued employee in Rock County. Jody has shown compassion and professionalism with clients of the Human Services Department by coordinating grievances and complaints with attention to the rights and needs of those we serve. In addition, Jody has played an integral role in supporting the work of the Human Services Board by organizing all elements of meetings, minutes, and communication with board members. Jody is known as a warm and welcoming face who is the go-to for any staff person who has questions. She consistently takes an interest in getting to know others on a personal level, which makes people feel comfortable coming to her for assistance. Throughout her career with Rock County, Jody has reflected the county's values of honesty, integrity, and respect. And you have all my respect, Jody. You're an example for others with your reliability, sincerity, and your spirit of helpfulness. Jody, you've served as a critical member of the Human Services Department team, and we're going to miss you. Whereas the Rock County Board of Supervisors wishes to recognize you, Jody, for your dedication and contribution to the citizens of this county. Thank you very much.
I just want to say a few words about Jody, who has, as long as I've been in this position of Human Services Director, been my administrative assistant to support the leadership of the department. And so that resolution says a lot about Jody's experience, but what I want to say is even though her role has been in a supportive role to leaders, Jody has been a significant leader for Human Services. She has earned trust. She has built connections and helped other people to build connections. She's been an instrument of relationship and support for me personally in big ways and for our department, which means services to our clients have been improved and strong because of her skill and commitment, and we will miss her. So thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Kate and Brian, for your thoughtful recognition. Thank you, County Board Chair and board members. I'm honored to be here tonight and very appreciative for the experience I have gained working for the Human Services for over 33 years. I would like to take this opportunity to show my appreciation, first, to recognize Kate Luster, Greg Winkler, Tara O'Connor, and Sarah Moran, who I have worked closely with over the last several years. I truly admire how you can take on projects and overcome challenges. A great example being the DWRC building and the move. It really has been great working with all of you. Also, it has been absolutely my pleasure to work with all the county administration staff, all the human resources staff, corp council staff, finance staff, IT, county clerk, and facilities management. Thank Thank you to each of you. I sincerely mean that. I have been a resident of Rock County for my entire life. I'm proud to have been employed by Human Services all these years, and my reward really is the friendships I have made. I have seen a lot of posts lately regarding retirement and picked this one to end with today. Life is like a book. Some chapters are sad, some happy, and some exciting. But if you never turn the page, you will never know what the next chapter holds. Thank you and have a good evening.
Next item, please.
Next item, item 9, introduction of new resolutions or ordinances by supervisors for referral to appropriate committee.
Any supervisors wishing to introduce a new resolution, please bring it forward at this time. Supervisor Cullen, would you like to give us a brief description of your resolution?
It's a resolution asking for $500,000 of ARPA money to support the Rock County Children's Museum.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item, item 10, reports. 10A, strategic planning update.
Randy?
Thank you, everybody. So just to give you I would call it a brief update. We'll see how long this is, but brief update on the strategic plan. You have two pieces of information in front of you at your desk. One is titled the Rock County Strategic Plan Department Initiatives. It's a kind of a sideways landscape item. And then because it's been a while since last March, I've included the preliminary strategic plan that was adopted back on March of last year. And that's what that looks like. So in just a brief timeline of what we've done, in budget 22, money was allocated in the budget $50,000 to undertake a county-wide strategic plan. In the winter, spring of 22, a request for proposal on selecting a consultant was undertaken, and we selected Baker Tilly via resolution and amended the budget to add another roughly $56,000 for a total project cost of $105,000. In spring, summer of that year, when the consultant was on board, he conducted a variety of interviews with external and internal department heads. As part of the external interview and focus group process, there were approximately 7 major focus group areas that the consultant consulted to get input on what the county should be looking at regarding a strategic plan. And those included the Health and Human Services, which an example of that was the healthcare systems, Mercy and SSM. the community and social area of focus, which included the League of Women Voters, the NAACP Beloit Chapter, and the Boys and Girls Club. Under public safety and emergency management, include all the law enforcement agencies in the county and fire. They surveyed farmers and livestock and ag production businesses. And under housing, the two major housing authorities and realtors in the county. And then under tourism, the Rock County Tourism Council. That was the extent of the external interviews. That, I think, totaled over 100 people that were involved in those external focus groups. And then from that, a special work session was given on September 10 of 2022. It was a Saturday at the DWRC, and most of the day was spent with you all in a workshop to facilitate the identification of goals and objectives. And then from that meeting, it took a while for us to get it together to come back to you in May of last year with the preliminary strategic plan, which is this item here. And that item included roughly identification of 5 major goal areas and approximately 16 objectives that are related to each of those goal areas. So what in May 25 of 2023, the county board adopted the resolution accepting the preliminary strategic plan and directing staff to develop initiatives. So between May of last year and where we're at right now, departments have been working to try to identify initiatives of projects that fit into those goals and those objectives. 5 department initiatives are identified for you to review, and that's what this information is. And the way it's structured per the consultant kind of outline is that from May of last year, the identification of the goals and objectives, the department's identified initiatives in this yellow highlighted area, which is kind of hard to read, but it includes the identification of departments spelling out, documenting initiatives that fit into those objectives, accountability measures, which is basically who would be responsible within that department for implementing that initiative. Could be the whole department in some cases. It could be a special team, sub-team of the department. Target completion date, and that could be broken out into different phases of that department initiative. And then the key performance indicators. What is the measurable, how can we measure progress along that for that department initiative? And so one example I have of a whole thing that kind of goes through the full process is the health department. And under the goal area of community health and well-being, the objective of improving substance abuse prevention and treatment service offerings, health department identified as preliminary initiatives, implement the opioid settlement fund implementation plan. And then another initiative is sustain the overdose fatality review and implement strategies to prevent substance use that have been identified through the OFR team. The the team that would be responsible for that is the whole health department. And then under key performance indicators and completion date, under that first initiative would be implement the plan according to the scheduled timeline with the quarterly. So that's one example of the health department. The health department consists, they've contributed approximately probably a half a dozen of department initiatives throughout these major goal areas and these objectives. The next step through the strategic planning process then is that from now until mid-March, the governing committees would be presented the department-specific initiatives for you to review at the department, at the governing committee level, review and or approve, so that they could be reported back to the March 28th county board meeting, and then we'd have a full package of the goals, objectives, department initiatives, which would include the other accountability timeframe and key performance indicators. And so, assuming that there would be discussion and or adoption in the end of March meeting, there would then be follow through and monitoring by the governing committee thereafter. So I just wanted to explain to you the process of what's involved in here. But the key thing to look at would be the sheet that says Rock County Strategic Plan Department Initiatives, because that starts giving you what is going to be discussed at the committee meeting in those meetings that are coming up. So I went through that kind of brief, I think. Any questions?
Questions? Supervisor Cullen.
Response from the employees and Rock County employees. Positive, negative, complaining, they're looking forward to it, busy work, what's their comments?
Well, so if you look at these initiatives, 95% of these are what we're working on already. So like the opioid settlement, the Sheriff's Department, crisis intervention work with HSD, a lot of the stuff that is in this is already what's going on right now. It just begins to more targeted towards the future and what the timelines are. So for the most part, employees are already aware of what's involved and because they're already doing the things that in these various projects that are identified. So I don't see pretty much any surprises in that, and I don't think you should see any surprises, particularly those that are going through the governing committee, like the Board of Health, that are looking at opioid settlement stuff and so forth. So.
Other questions, comments? Supervisor Stevens?
I'm looking at thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the efforts under advanced efforts to increase access to affordable housing and the stuff that we've allotted towards housing. And I'm thinking about the issue that has come up don't really want to bring up anybody's name, but we're probably all aware of what's going on, maybe. So has that kind of changed? Has that been maybe getting addressed in some of these initiatives now? Are we kind of taking into consideration some of that stuff that's going on now that wasn't a part of the issue?
Yeah, so I think that if you look at number 4, Department Issue number 4, Planning and Development, in conjunction with Rouse Housing Authority, work with the cities of Beloit and Janesville to complete the consolidated plan, which include goals and strategies and use of home funds to be implemented. I think that can fall under there.
But do you know if that has become a part of the conversation? Because there are a lot of people who are suddenly looking for housing. Josh, do you know if that's part of the conversation now?
Yeah, so there's conversations going on, in a sort of almost a crisis management kind of a way to try to manage that. So the city is certainly taking the lead on that, but we're involved both through our human services, emergency management, and others, and a lot of community involvement in that. But I'd say that is on a time frame that is accelerated before really this, is so really outside of this. This really is, I think, on sort of probably longer term and bigger picture than that acute issue that we're dealing with right now.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments, questions?
I have some related to the same issue. I heard there's. Microphone. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I have heard that there is a pretty extreme problem trying to relocate timeline to purchase the property and put everything in place would put the tenants in jeopardy if they tried to stay there. And so I think there's really a need to step up and try to find some solutions of where people are going to go. I mean, I know that Kate mentioned there's quite a few, I think 40-some of the households are, in human services programs, and they are being affected. I today personally spoke to someone whose daughter is out looking, and they have 3 children, and they're not finding anything. And I know what you're looking at is more of a long-range thing, but I think we've got an immediate need coming up here, and it's going to be hard to solve it.
Others?
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Next item, please.
Next item, item 10B, tornado response update.
Josh?
If I could ask Sheriff Fell and Kevin Ornette, our Emergency Management Director, to come to the front now. They're going to lead us through a discussion, just give you an update overview that they've done several times now on the status of the outcome of the tornado that was a couple weeks ago tonight. So I'll just turn it over to them.
So first, in this presentation, the sheriff will walk us through the response timeline, and then I'll walk you through the incident command structure that was used and some of the recovery efforts. This is ongoing, going to be going on for a while, but I'll ask the sheriff to start with the timeline. One thing I do want to, before we start, the transition out of the sheriff's office into the standalone emergency management department is, I think, been accelerated with recent events, but going incredibly well. And our staff, both from the sheriff's office and the emergency management department, have been really closely collaborating during the response and since. So really proud to say how well that is going and how much support we've got from the sheriff's office is part of that. We're only an office of two, and so relying on all those other agencies has been vital and important. Sheriff.
So as Kevin has stated, we'll go through a timeline of kind of how things panned out. A number of you were here on the date that this had occurred. You know, at that time, personally, I had seen that it looked like a tornado had touched down. Initially, I was told in Evansville. Turned out to be outside, kind of northeast of Evansville, fortunately not hitting a lot of the areas that could have had some pretty significant injuries out of. We were very fortunate in the fact that it did not end up having loss of life or serious injuries to a number of people. With it, as you can see on the board, around 5:30 is when you had the warning go out. You had 2 spottings of tornado shortly after that. As it went, it started in Greene County, worked its way into our county, circumventing, going underneath and past Evansville towards Edgerton. But as it did it, Evansville, an officer reported seeing sirens going off because he realized a lot of times people, when they hear them, they go and look instead of taking action. And then also they noticed a big drop in temperature and some other things going on, which is symbolic or part of what happens when a tornado runs through. I've had a few of them now, and it makes it interesting. For those that don't know it, just take 12 away from it. But at 5:52, they reported loss of the power within the municipality of Evansville and cell service, which can be pretty substantial. It created a lot of concerns because when the things like that happen, we worry about not just the people that are there, but everybody and their brother trying to come in to check on their loved ones in that area. So at 5:53, 911 center got contacted about an occupied vehicle that had been moved by the tornado. And then they got calls for damage around 14 Atolls, which was one of the main, those 14 Atolls, another vehicle got reported as being damaged. That one, Evansville EMS actually transported somebody. That was the main, or the only person really that night that had been transported. Which when you talk about a tornado, the size of the one and the powerful aspect of the one that came through is pretty remarkable. Kevin will touch a lot about the direction and everything else it went, but the fact that we didn't end up with more people going was a miracle, to say it lightly. But at that point in time, we didn't know it. So realizing there was lack of ability to communicate by our citizens that were there, you'll see what happens going down the road. But poles were down, power lines down all over the place, made it difficult to get into the area. For us, we had people responding from all over the place, from Milton, Edgerton, town of Fulton, the whole litany of them. You'll see the list later on. Kevin gets notified by our sergeant that, hey, the tornado touched down. He starts going over there. He lets me know, but I don't run out of here when I was at the meeting because I didn't think, creating a little more chaos would have done any good. But I headed that way as well. And we had deputies in the area by about 3 minutes after 6. And then Edgerton also at that time reported the storm just passing, and it kind of went up that way, skipped over the lake, and then went into Jefferson County. We established a command post right around 7. Initially, we had looked at Stoughton trailers to put the command post up. We realized that with the vehicles that were there, it wasn't going to be sufficient, because we knew at that time we were going to bring a lot of first responders in without knowing really how badly anybody was hurt. We knew we were probably going to need a lot. So we shifted that over to the Piggly Wiggly parking lot, and they were very gracious in opening their doors and saying, whatever you need, you got. And we took over that parking lot for the next like 2.5 days, which for a business is pretty significant. And I was certainly very appreciative. For whatever reason, they put me getting in there about 20 after 7, but then the Mavis page out went for more ambulances, more fire personnel. We had a lot of cops in the area already, but when the Mavis call goes out for the fire departments, it's like an army comes, which was significant, and it made a difference. At that point in time, or shortly thereafter, we had set up and done grid searches. We divided the south part between County M and 14 into 3 areas, east, west, and central, and we went door to door. I was in the command post, so I can't take credit for that, but our people and the fire people and the EMS went door to door, checking with people to make sure that they were all right. My job at that point in time was to put it out to the media as much as we could, so that way people whose loved ones lived there knew that somebody was going to go and check on their family. That took from about 7:45 to about 9, a little after that, and then we can feel good about knowing that we checked on everybody. I talked to some of our deputies that went, and some of the people, most of them answered the door and talked and everything. A few of them were still a little freaked out, but there were no other serious injuries found out. And that was our main priority out of that. Kevin had been in contact with Josh, and the emergency declaration went out just before 9 o'clock. ATC, the power company that does the power coming in before it gets disseminated, was contacted and realized that they were having issues. They had over 50 poles, did he say, that went down that were just theirs. I learned a lot more about power and light being a part of this and the aspects of how it comes and gets sent out than I had ever known before. But it was pretty substantial, the number of people that had come out from each of the perspectives. The box alarm they talk about, the Mavis thing, got canceled then at 11 o'clock, and we allowed a lot of the people that had come to help to go because our biggest priority of checking for life safety was done. We knew there was still a lot to do as far as keeping the roads closed, keeping some of the other people that weren't from the community in there so we could keep everybody we could safe and have as many people out so that if something were to happen, they could come in contact with one of our deputies or an officer from a different jurisdiction relatively quickly. So Kevin will go over the damage path that kind of went on. You ready?
All right, so what you're seeing is a result of a survey at about 7 a.m. on Friday morning. The National Weather Service sent a team here to Rock County, met us at the plant. So they went out, they go to the edge and keep working until they found it. They determined it to be 2 storms. One was started in Albany and was rated as an EF1. And then the storm that hit near the town of Porter, in the town of Porter and the adjacent communities was an EF2. I know there's been a lot of questions, but they went back and looked at some of the drone footage from the Rock County Sheriff's Office, the State Patrol flight, and some of the others with some experts, and are confident that that rating EF2 will stand. As we went through the morning, we started to shift out of the response mode into trying to get our handle around what was going on. We still weren't sure where the storm was from the map you saw earlier, but we also knew that there would be the morning commute, and so Captain Thompson and myself worked to establish or to write a press release and push that to give folks warning And I got to tell you, from about midnight, it's a lot earlier than that, until daylight, DPW was on scene. They brought out their traffic control, their emergency trailer, and a lot of things. And Dewey was a critical part, and his superintendents working with the sheriff's office and the local fire and EMS to figure out where roads need to be blocked so that we could get ahead of that before the morning commute and not cause additional problems. Started the damage assessment, and then just continue to provide updates out to the community. One of the things we did when we found out the power was going to be out, we leveraged Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, which is that same system that the National Weather Service uses to push messages to your cell phones, to let folks know that power could be on in that confined area for a long time. And then later we used that to bring the community together, at least those that were in the most impacted area, to provide a briefing Friday evening and make sure that everybody had a warm, safe place to stay and have those discussions. So that piece, I think, is a critical success in being able to use and leverage those kind of systems. A list of responding agencies that were coordinated through the Incident Command Post, and there were many others that were out there to help individually their neighbors. So you can see it's a pretty extensive list, and I think folks that were out there, and the feedback that we got from the Hot Wash was that this was well organized and brought together quickly and in a concerted effort. And one of the things that I had were questions about roles, and so we'll talk about that when we get to the ICS structure. Here's a list of supporting entities. We had our neighbors and other emergency management folks that helped us with damage assessment, and just a lot of supporting agencies that stepped in to provide that assistance that we needed to respond. Here's the incident command structure, and you'll notice that it doesn't matter when we have one of these large ones which uniform you're wearing. Everybody provides resources into the pool of resources, and then we leverage that to manage the incident. It was critical that the Sheriff's Office, Evansville EMS, Evansville Fire were in that unified command post. But beyond that, Evansville Fire working over into the area of the Edgerton Fire District. We had Edgerton fire apparatus that were assigned to a different division. Folks as far away as Fitchburg and other law enforcement that were blended into the response. And if you're in staging and you're the next up, you get that next assignment and go, and you can be proud of folks. This is a picture of the command post. We initially established, we had my vehicle and your vehicle assigned to me, sorry. And the fire department back up. And initially, the incident commanders were standing out there in the drizzling rain. So that is one example of us all coming together to work together. And in the foreground of that picture, there's a Starlink device. Verizon's crisis response team, he lives in Evansville, was able to show up quickly, and that provided us internet. In 911, Fred was able to bring up the CAD and allow those folks out in the field access to the CAD remotely because we had that Starlink and he was there. So we had better situational awareness. Damage. I believe we have 30 homes. There were still some assessments going on. And so we'll, which are destroyed, major, minor, and affected. And each of those are predefined in that damage assessment matrix that's used by emergency management across the country. We did have costs and market value, and those categories, you apply a percentage, and then you add those up to get the total estimate. That $2.4 million that you saw in the news was on primary residence. That does not include the agricultural impacts. So the barns, the stock, the feed in storage, the implements and equipment are not included in those numbers, and it will take a long time if we ever truly know what the impact was to the agricultural piece of this. Working with UW Extension and USDA Farm Services Administration and others to make their programs available to residents as we go. Here's the cost, estimated overtime cost for both Public Works and the Sheriff's Office. And those are rough initial estimates, just to get an idea. One of the things that, as we talk about damage assessment and we talk about different programs including the Wisconsin Disaster Fund, is cost. So keep these in mind as I talk about the Wisconsin Disaster Fund. Ooh, okay, we may have. The Wisconsin Disaster Fund is an assistance program for limited reimbursement payments for eligible public sector applicants for damages. The way the Wisconsin Disaster Fund works is they take as per capita for the population and then apply that as a threshold to be eligible. Okay? On the last census, it was roughly $4,500 for expenses. And so that's pretty easy to achieve that in public sector expenses responding to a storm like that. When we apply that to Town of Union and Town of Fulton, not near that threshold of expenses. And if you apply that to Rock County, we're talking about $1 million in public sector damages to county facilities and infrastructure or costs. So we're nowhere near close to that threshold for eligibility in the Wisconsin Disaster Fund. And it only covers 3 eligible categories. So it covers debris clearance for emergency work, protective measures, that initial showing up, blocking the roads, getting that piece done, and then public roads and bridges for permanent work. In this case, most of the damages were on the private sector side. The one thing that the Wisconsin Disaster Fund does not cover is the individual assistance to those homeowners. And the one thing that we didn't hit the threshold was to be eligible for that at the federal level as well. Next steps, we did work through the initial town gathering and then had a community gathering last Thursday where we brought in providers, Salvation Army, Red Cross, and so many other state agencies talking about fraud prevention, the Insurance Commissioner's Office, the USDA, and just a full gamut of folks that could provide support to make sure that the community members that were impacted had a chance to talk to those people that were offering or able to help. And there's also a task force that's been formed of some community members that wanted to provide leadership and seek donations and help work with those agencies and entities that were offering to help and help link and connect the dots between the people that needed it, their neighbors, and those organizations that are offering. And we continue to support that effort as well. Sheriff, did I miss anything?
I'd just like to wrap it up with the fact that I talked to a lot of you over the years, back when I was a captain and now. And a lot of what I've always heard is collaboration, working together, everything else. This was the epitome of that. The fact that Evansville came out, Edgerton came out, and then there are villages that were in parts of the cities that were not affected that came out anyways. Janesville had several people involved. Beloit sent their trailer and several people helped cover the roads. The volunteers that came out of everywhere, it was phenomenal. It's really something to be a point of pride. It was a truly disastrous event that affected a lot of people, and you had no shortage of people coming out to try to make a difference to help them out. That's just something I'm super proud of. And I don't think it could have been done any better by the people that had handled it and the people that came out. Any questions on anything?
Questions? Supervisor Cullen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for what you do. It sounds like you.
Go ahead. So I think we learned a few things. There were some communication issues that we learned about from what's simplex channels, and the big towers, and the divisions being able to talk to each other and back to the command post. There's some solutions for that, but everything costs money. And so we're working on identifying what those might be. But radio communication, additional training is always a plus. But I would say the biggest thing I learned from this being our first big disaster is how well all those agencies and community members are willing to chip in to help each other, and how strong the community is when it comes to neighbors helping neighbors in that farming community at Porter, sorry.
One other thing, it sounded like Piggly Wiggly stepped up for this, for you guys. Anything thought?
Already have plans on how we can do that with some of the different groups that have come forward. I mean, you know, you guys get invited to our award ceremony every year, and my intention is to have them included with it for what they had done, because they didn't have to. And, you know, Beloit was great with the command post, but it limits what you can do when they open up, and we don't have to worry about bringing in porta potties or other stuff or other things to make it more user-friendly for us. And dinner for everybody one of the nights, and did it in the Piggly Wiggly parking lot. And when I first saw the Hy-Vee thing go up, I thought, oh no. And it was handled professionally on all aspects. So we certainly intend on that. And I appreciate the question, because I like the fact of how accommodating and helpful everybody was, and being able to recognize them in a setting like this is important. One thing I would like to note on for the lessons learned, we recently went to FirstNet phones, went through the budget, and initially I was a little hesitant because they were a little expensive to change, and they proved their worth, their weight in gold for us that night. Nothing else worked. My personal phone, which is not FirstNet, not a chance. My work one, not an issue. So we definitely took some good steps, and some of the fire department,
I do have another comment out there, Supervisor Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Kevin. How long have you been on the job, Kevin?
Approximately 4 months, sir.
Baptized by fire. Kevin gave Supervisor Beaver and I an update on Friday afternoon, and it was very helpful to understand the scope, even though I was in the middle of it. Just for everybody's information, I didn't have any damage, but my neighbors, close neighbors did. I'd like to thank Sheriff and his staff. As he said, they were out that night. Not only did they knock on doors once, they knocked on doors twice. So thank Kevin and his staff as well. I would really like to call out the hundreds of volunteers that came out with that kind of support. They didn't have to. It was a sight to see at moments. There was a farm that was not too far from me that lost some cattle, and the rest of them were scattered around the neighborhood, and to see young adults herding those cattle a couple of miles back to the farm. Many of those young adults have never seen the backside of a cow, I'm certain. Another sight was to watch, 50, 75 people go across the field and pick up everything in that field. Thank you.
Other comments? Supervisor Beaver.
I would like to echo what Mr. Supervisor Sweeney just said. Thank you, Mr. Chair, by the way. You guys did an awesome job. It was a mess. And to bring all of those different units together and have it all work as a unified command, I mean, that takes a lot. And I think it all starts with the training that is offered by emergency management in the ICS world. And, like you said, you had people from all over, from churches, you had little girls that were in the Girl Scouts or Brownies or whatever they were. They came out and wanted to help, and it was just amazing to see, all out there. The DPW, you had Kate out there You're out there. You know, the DPW, you had Kate out there. Your health department was involved. I mean, you had technicals everywhere of people out there to help. And awesome job. And Evansville was truly blessed that we didn't have anybody seriously injured in that event. And I can't thank you guys enough for all that you do. So, thank you.
Other comments, questions? I will mention that I did go out there with Josh to survey what was going on. And we toured the area, and we went to the Piggly Wiggly parking lot, and we went into there were people from all these different municipalities and everything else, departments. It was a beehive, but it was not chaotic at all. It was anything but. Everybody was on it. Everybody knew its very finest right there. So thank you, Supervisor Holman.
Thank you, Chair. In all this congratulatory business that's going on, there's the one thing that I see was somewhat forgot, and that's the people who are the backfill people that weren't seen. The people who were there were seen and known and congratulated. But you have, say, fire departments or other officials that aren't on that day, that came to the aid of the ones who did show up. Case in point, I'm just going to bring this one because I know this one for a fact. But when you start talking about the backfilling, my son works for the highway department. He got called to show. He told his supervisor that I'm at the fire department, backfilling a fire truck that just came in ambulance to Evansville. His boss told him, you stay there, because that's way more important than showing up at that scene. He was covering the people who he wouldn't generally cover coming this direction. He was covering the county going out the other direction. So you just look at all the people that didn't show up at that, who are backfilling the necessary people to be there.
Others? Thank you very much. Oh, Supervisor Peer.
I guess I'd join everyone else in congratulating you on what a great job you did in organizing everything and keeping people as safe as they could be. But I'd like to, and I know you never are seeking any kind of recognition yourselves. It's really nice what's going on here. What a great feeling we're all having in our hearts. But I'd also like to encourage, if there's any way the board or any other agency represented here, the media's here, to get this out as much as we can to the public. Maybe in the great web that we hear so many negative things, but to promote this kind of cohesiveness and show that, I don't know if you'd say we're exactly different. I'd like to hope there's a lot of communities that would cooperate like this, but maybe that's not true. But we'd certainly like to encourage it so that it can multiply and we see more and more of it. America is a great place to be. And I think this really showed when you're down and out, people draw together and do a lot of good. You know, they talk about the silent majority. Let's not be real silent about this. Thank you.
Sir, if I could make one comment?
Go ahead, Kevin.
If we do message that, if you could help us promote that there's still folks that lost their homes that need help. And so any message that we do send out, if we could promote that support, it's going to go on for a long time until those homes are rebuilt, and it's going to take even longer for folks to feel comfortable every time they hear the sirens.
Others? Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Next item, 11, new business. 11B, contracts. B1, awarding contract for nutrition program, food preparation and delivery.
Moved by Supervisor Knutson, seconded by Supervisor Davis.
Residents. The nutrition program is administered through the Rock County Human Services Department, ADRC Aging Unit, provides approximately 65,500 meals annually. The program serves an essential role and meets a crucial need in the community by providing nutritious meals to vulnerable adults. Aramark is currently the contracted meal provider for the Rock County Sheriff's Department and the Youth Services Center. Meals will be prepared using the kitchen at the Rock County Jail. The Human Services Department is requesting to contract with Aramark effective March 1st of this year through December 31st, 2025. The rate per meal will be $7.95 with an annual estimate of $520,725. Funds are included in this year's Human Services Department budget. We would appreciate your support.
Comments, questions? Supervisor Levy.
Thanks, Board Chair. And since I am working with this company in a different division of it, I will be abstained from voting on that.
All, please vote.
Yes, 24, 0 no, 4 absent, 1 abstain.
Next item, please.
Next item, item 11C, ratifying the declared local state of emergency.
Moved by Supervisor Beaver, seconded by Supervisor Holman. Supervisor Beaver.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Smith, it's all yours.
Thank you. So as you see in the resolution in front of you, if you read that, there is some authority in emergency situations for declaration of emergency, which gets things moving quickly and access to certain things. And certainly, I think, as you can see from the presentation, those things are necessary to go pretty quickly. But the law also requires ratification by the board of a declared state of emergency, which then is the next step to confirm that not only you're in agreement that occurred, and the fact that going forward, then as Kevin just said, we still have recovery to do, and that provides some benefits going forward as well. So this is ratification. Any other questions that are detailed? I'm sure Corp Counsel can weigh in on the law of it if there are questions.
Questions, comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Next item, please.
Next item, item 11D, requesting that the governor and state and federal representatives and agencies maximize the availability of resources to assist Rock County residents in tornado recovery efforts.
Moved by Supervisor Sweeney, seconded by Supervisor Towns. Supervisor Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you can read in an administrative note, the event is unlikely to qualify for federal disaster, but it's important to advocate for the access to those programs. Thank you.
Comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Next item, please.
Next item, item 11E, approving awards of the opioid settlement funds for sober living and treatment proposals.
Moved by Supervisor Knutson, seconded by Supervisor Winter. Supervisor Knutson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The opioids areas of sober living and access to higher living treatment options. The plan specifies $860,000 for this priority area, including $200,000 for sober living, $600,000 for access to higher level treatment, and $60,000 for gap analysis. Human Services developed a work group for this project in September and started by educating community partners about the opioid settlement fund plan and getting feedback about the RFP process related to this project. This included discussions and community meetings, emailing information, and developing a streamlined RFP document. The RFP was issued on October 13th. 4 responses were received. There were 3 proposals in the category of sober living and 1 proposal in the category of access to higher level treatment. The opportunity to support all these proposals with the budgeted funds is an efficient way to meet the specific needs that have been identified. We would appreciate your support.
Comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Next item, please.
Next item, 11F, resolution awarding the sale of $38,440,000 general obligation jail law enforcement services project bonds, providing the form of the bonds and levying the tax in connection with their.
Moved by Supervisor Mahoney, seconded by Supervisor Clayson. Supervisor Mahoney.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to call on Carol Worth for an explanation.
All right, good evening. I am going to go over, there was a handout that is on our letterhead. It says Wisconsin at the top here, okay? So that is what we call the summary of the sale that took place today. And I'm going to start with the background. The last time I appeared before you in January, we went through a report on this remaining portion of the jail law enforcement services project. And at that time, the true interest rate projection was a 3.34%. And since that time, in the month of February, we went into the bond market, and that included preparation of like a prospectus on the county. It's called an official statement that goes out into the marketplace to solicit bids from underwriters and also from investors. And we also went through a bond rating process with Moody's Investor Service. Every time the county borrows money, we must do that. So that resulted in receiving, first of all, a confirmation of the AA1 bond rating from Moody's, which is excellent news. And we'll go through that credit report shortly. We also received bids this morning and from underwriters. And this time we received a total of 9 bids. We did have interest from 15 firms lined up to bid. But at the last minute, they determine if they have enough interest from investors to actually place a bid, or they might have bought in something else and they don't submit a bid. So bottom line, we ended up with 9 bids. They're shown at the bottom there on page 1. And you can see that they came from the representation of 6 different states. The winning bidder, Wells Fargo, out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And that true interest rate is 3.3999%. It does include all expenses associated with issuing the bonds as well. And all of those expenses, which would be our fee underwriter. Okay, so that is the bottom line as to the results of selling the $38,440,000. On page 2 of this report, this is the repayment schedule. So you're going to see there under the coupon column, interest rates of 4% going up to 5% and then back down to 4%. Okay, that is the way the underwriter submitted his bid. So the principal column, you're going to be repaying principal from 2025 through 2043. And then the interest column, of course, is developed by applying that coupon or interest rate to those principal amounts. And then to the far right column, fiscal total, is the calendar year annual debt service, principal and interest, okay? So you can see also a column that talks about the call date. So these bonds have a basically either prepay the debt starting at that date, or if interest rates are lower at that time and there's a savings advantage, you could actually do a refinancing. all of the activity of the coupon and the yield column produces a premium. You can see by the price column, everything was basically priced at over 100. So that means investors were paying more than $100 for $100 worth of bonds. When that happens, it generates what's called a premium. So look at the dollar price column. You'll see the grand total there, $42,263,000. And the county sold $38,440,000. So that was over $3.8 million of premium generated by the sale of the bonds. Remainder comes back to the county. So the county is going to receive $3,496,000 of that premium. That premium can only go into the debt service account and is used to offset your debt service levy. Okay, so that's how you get down to the true interest cost being the 3.399, even though you're seeing all the interest rates on the page at 4s and 5s, okay? That's what brings that down to that calculation, is by applying that $3.4 million of premium that the county gets back. All of that money is going to come to the county on the closing date of March 11th, okay? So at that time, that's where the money gets divided up. $38,440,000 goes into project, and the premium goes into debt service. They never get commingled, okay? The other is the resolution that you're acting upon tonight is going to contain all of these final terms and interest rates. That resolution requires in order to pass, a majority of the members present. It will approve the borrowing terms, lock in the rates. Even though the money comes in March, you are not at risk for anything changing. And it will officially award the bonds to Wells Fargo Bank. Okay? So with that, I'm going to move on to the next page that has a schedule that you've seen the last time. And the schedule now has all of the debt service numbers as actual. So there's no estimates on the numbers. So that it starts with a column that says your existing debt, and that means everything other than this bond issue. And then you have the actual debt service on this bond issue. We combine them, and then we take that information into your 2023 equalized value. So that's the reason why we say an estimated tax increase, because your valuation most likely is going to increase over these years. As the value increases, the tax rate comes down. It also shows in 2025 that increase being 34 cents. Well, that's only because what it's offsetting that is the premium, but the county every year in its budget process also makes determinations if other dollars are applied to the debt service levy to lower that number. So as it was in the 2 years prior to that. Okay, so just want you to know where the numbers are coming from on that page. So that has hardly changed since the last time you've seen it, since there was such a minor difference between we were projecting the 3.34 and it came in at, you know, this 3.39, so we are very close. All right, moving on to the Moody's credit report. The credit report, it's always being changed in the format that Moody's is putting this information out to us. Seems like it's getting smaller and smaller in terms of the words, but I can assure you that it is good news that we are at the AA1. They also cite improvements, that is improvements in our growth in the county, which is supported by the increases in equalized value. It also is citing some improvement in what we call the social economic indices, all right? And that would mean the resident income levels, right? Which takes a long time to change. And so they're actually recognizing that in this credit report, which is good news as well. Keep in mind, every time we go through this rating call with them, we very aggressively push for them to consider finally getting us to that AAA. We're at a AA1, which is just a notch below the AAA, so we aren't giving up yet. But that's why we're always excited to see them recognize positive things in the county. So So that looks good. The actual best summary of written information is on the next page, kind of towards the bottom where it says detailed credit consideration. That first paragraph, I think, is the best part of this resident income and full value per capita that says are on a par with the nation and similarly rated peers. So in the past, we didn't get that kind of a credit. It talks about, when we went through this rating process, the last audit that was available was the 22 audit. Okay, and actually, you know, and we're in 24, so it becomes kind of a time lag here as to what's going on. So with the 22 audit, you may recall that when we did the 23 financing, we did almost $60 million last year financing, right? And the majority of that money was to pay ourselves back, okay? Because the county was using funds to build the projects, and the borrowing was paying the county back for those projects. So the 22 audit is showing that we're missing this money that was replenished, right, with the borrow. But Moody's knew that. I mean, obviously, they rated the issue. So it's kind of a non-issue. But when you look at the fund balance number in 22, it says there's a decline, but they also then talk about the fact that as it continues on here, that it will, the 23 numbers will reflect that replenishment due to the borrowing that was done in 23, okay? So just wanted you to kind of understand how that is written. And as always, county is exposed to some enterprise risk associated with a county-owned nursing home. I mean, that's standard language. It says it historically had narrow liquidity, but now with the new Medicaid rates, they anticipate that fiscal 23's audit is going to show a much better picture, and is anticipated to have a $4 million increase to cash. So they're recognizing much the comments that reflect the change from one year to another in their credit reports, okay? The top of that page is just key statistics from year to year, and the reason they put those out is because some underwriters or investors that are really in tune to monitoring that on a national basis will look at those key statistics and get their own picture of the credit value, okay? The next pages with the graphs, I would admit, are a little bit confusing. So I'm not going to try to interpret those. I wish I would personally rather see words, but this is news to Moody's. That's followed by what they call environmental, social, and governance information, which is not a part of your credit rating at all in terms of the scoring. Matter of fact, the language in here is identical to the language in the previous credit report from a year ago. And that's followed by information on their methodology and their scorecard and an appendix, okay, that kind of gives you definitions of terms. So then, following that is the resolution itself. And once again, this resolution is prepared in a format similar to is prepared by your bond counsel, which is Greg's law office, and they are specialists in the arena of municipal debt issuance. I'm just going to start with a couple of the paragraphs here to demonstrate that how this is tracking, and it starts with the first whereas, talking about the county board back in 2022 adopting that initial resolution for $78,440,000. And you may recall, we've had discussions about, right, what's an initial resolution, what's it doing, and this and that. And again, that's the authority step, right? So that happened way back in 2022, right? And how did that happen? Well, that happened as a result of your county administration and the county board working with your consultants on the building projects. And you establish a budget, right? You say, well, the money's going to come from this and this and this, and $78,440,000 of borrowing. That's how that number gets into that initial resolution, and that's how it comes to the county board for authority action. All right, after that, the next whereas says that in June of 2023, right? That the county board took action, similar to a night like this, on a resolution that approved some borrowing. And that borrowing was $57,875,000. Of that amount, 40 million of that was against that initial resolution. The rest of it was against different initial resolutions that the county board adopted. Okay, so we can combine the authority and go out with one borrowing. So that was that 57,875,000. But again, only 40 million was against the 78,440,000 initial resolution. So that leaves us with the next whereas. The remaining 38,440,000 is what you're doing today. And then we're done. There is no outstanding authority unless the county board in its future comes back and does an initial resolution for some purpose. Okay, so this is it. This is the final borrowing for against any initial resolution. All right. So and so now it's basically saying that we move forward with the other whereases, that we put the information out into the marketplace, and we took bids this morning, that Wells Fargo is the winning bidder, and it continues on to talk about the terms of the bonds, when you're paying principal and interest, when they are have a prepayment feature, the fact that you're going to pay them back with levy of taxes, that there's a debt service fund created for this. So when you collect the taxes, the money goes in the debt service fund, and that debt service fund is used to pay off the bonds. The next page talks about these are tax exempt to the investor, so we are required to comply with federal law, and that's called arbitrage law. So we anticipate that we're in good shape there, that everything is going to be compliant. And then we go on to page number 4 at the bottom, where it says we're going to pay the debt service marketplace for today's sale. And there will be another one printed, a final, that will have the actual results from today's sale, because that document is required to go to the actual people who bought your bonds. They get a confirmation of the purchase, and they get the final official statement. So we'll be producing that as of tomorrow. And the actual resolution number at the bottom, page 5, numbered page 5, says that that the county board chair and county clerk are going to be signing. So we're kind of approving that. And ongoing disclosure into the marketplace, which we also assist the county with. That's followed by an Exhibit A, which says bid form. That's how the underwriter submits his formal bid to the county. On the bid form, it's showing those interest rates, it's showing the purchase price, which includes that extra premium that's coming to the county. The second page of that says that he's going to pick up the expenses that are listed at the top, as well as his own. And that is a document that he signs, and the chair and clerk will be signing. That's the contract between the underwriter and the county. Okay, so he gets a copy, the county gets a copy, and that locks in the action. Okay, that's followed by Exhibit B. Exhibit B is it's a template. It's actually numbered at the bottom, is 4 pages long. And what happens is that for the bonds themselves, the bond council produces one typewritten bond, I'll call it, for every principal amount. And that has to be signed by the chair, which is the list of bidders, which you've already seen, followed by Exhibit D, which is the pricing, which you have already seen. Exhibit E is the repayment schedule, which you have already seen. So I guess I am ready for questions.
Questions for Carol? Supervisor Davis.
I was curious, as we move closer to a AAA rating, does that indicate that we are
that bring you to that level, and even the level you're at now, are due to your financial picture and your financial management. As we were talking about the socioeconomic indices getting better, see, those are the things that, because your financials are better than they need to be for the AA category, okay? But that's kind of picking up the weight for what might be considered weaker under the socioeconomic indices. So if it wasn't for your financials, you wouldn't even be at the AA1.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Supervisor Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a few questions. First question is, could a personal financial relationship with Wells Fargo be considered a perceived conflict of interest on this resolution?
A perceived conflict of interest, it's a subjective question. Anything could be a perceived conflict of interest. The question, would it be a conflict of interest under the Securities and Exchange Commission's regulations or U.S. securities law? We'd need to know a lot more about the detailed relationship between the parties involved.
And my next question is regarding the Moody's Investor Service Report. It's the second page. It's in the section that says detailed credit considerations, second paragraph. I think it's the third sentence in that second paragraph. It says, the county expects to issue about $3 million in fiscal 2025 for regular capital projects. If we were to do that in 2025, you need a 75% supermajority vote from the board to do that, right? Yes?
Yes, there's no, you would need to go through the same process of adopting an initial resolution.
What's your backup plan if you can't get 75% of the board to go along to further go into debt?
I can address that. So that is fairly standard language that we've used for a long time. The goal in discussing the rating with Moody's is to be transparent about what might happen so that potential investors might know what other debt the county might be taking on in the future. So historically, I think those of you who've been around a while will know that, we have done about $3 million-ish, sometimes more, sometimes less in borrowing for highway projects. We did not do that in the '24 budget, as you all recall, but that has been historical. And so it is possible that we'll do that. And so we wanted to be transparent with Moody's that might happen. And they phrase it like that as if it really is going to happen. But there is no expectation at this point that we're going to borrow for highway projects. That will be something that we'll deal with during the budget. And so better to be conservative in what we describe to Moody's about what might happen in the market in the future and our debt.
Alternative to pay that $3 million for the highway if it's not going to be debt?
But, we don't know at this point whether we're going to ask you to, in the budget, to borrow, whether we'll use sales tax like we did in the 2024 budget, whether we'll decrease the number of highway projects we'll do. So it's all speculative at this point. There's no, those are the options on the table at this point.
Is it a possibility that we could fund it without borrowing in 2025?
Well, we funded it without borrowing in 2024. So, there's precedent for not doing that.
So you'd say yes?
Well, of course there is. Of course there's precedent. And
All right, thank you.
Other comments, questions? Seeing none, this is roll call. Please vote.
Yes, 24, no 1, 4 absent. Wisconsin statutes, conferring with legal counsel concerning strategy to be adopted by the board regarding litigation in which it is or is like.
Express my concern regarding our compliance with the Wisconsin Open Meetings Law. This law mandates that the public must be provided with specific information about the subject matter of any closed session. The current description for this executive session, which is limited to citing the statutory exemption under section 1985 1G, does not sufficiently inform the public about the specific nature of the matters to be discussed, as is our obligation. Given the importance of transparency and legal compliance in our proceedings, I believe that continuing with this item in its current form may not only violate the open meetings law, but also potentially undermine public trust in the board. Therefore, I urge the board to reconsider proceeding with this item without first ensuring our notice meets the required standards of specificity as outlined in the Wisconsin Department of Justice's Open Meetings Law Compliance Guide.
That being said, is there a motion to go into executive session? Moved by Supervisor Mahoney, seconded.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Could we get a ruling on the point of order?
There was no request.
So there should be a ruling on it.
Need to make a request. What's the remedy?
To take it off the agenda.
That's already been ruled on.
Point of order then to keep it in open session.
Overruled.
Move to appeal the decision of the chair.
Is there a second?
No, this is a second to the appeal. Is there a second to the appeal?
Is there a second? Appeal fails due to lack of a second. This is roll call.
Point of order. I have a discussion item before we vote on this. If I may continue, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Zorro?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we vote to either go into closed session or not, it's important that the board is aware that Wisconsin Statute 19.85 authorizes closed sessions under certain circumstances, but it does not compel us to use a closed session. Keeping this discussion in an open session would ensure greater transparency and allow the public to better understand and trust the processes and decisions of this board, which is fundamental to our democratic principles. So I encourage everybody to vote no in terms of going into closed session.
Others? Okay, we are voting whether or not to go into executive session. Roll call, please vote. For the AV to be cleared out and the meeting secured. So